The morning broke with a sticky heat that clung to the skin like a second layer. In the slums of General Santos City, it was just another day, just another fight to survive. The Santos family, 5 souls bound by love and poverty, stirred awake to the familiar sounds of life at the margins, roosters crowing from corrugated rooftops, a neighbor's transistor radio sputtering gospel music, motorbikes groaning through narrow alleys, and the scent of boiled rice blending with the odor of stagnant water. For Rosa, the mother 38, this was a symphony of survival. She knew each sound by heart, and each one whispered a reminder, "You're still here, for now." Their home was more suggestion than structure. Built with salvaged plywood and rust-bitten metal sheets, the house leaned like it was exhausted. Holes in the ceiling let in sunlight by day and rain by night. One mattress was shared between the 3 children, while Rosa and her husband, Lando, slept on thin mats on the cracked floor. There was no bathroom, only a shared latrine 3 alleys away. Still, it was theirs. Rosa was already on her knees by 5 a.m., scrubbing the family's few clothes in a plastic basin. Her fingers, raw from years of detergent and cold water, moved rhythmically. Behind her, the children slowly woke. Anna, the eldest at 10, stretched her legs and immediately checked on her younger brother Joel, 7, who coughed lightly in his sleep. Baby Mila, only 2, clung to her tattered stuffed bear, blinking curiously at the light streaming through the wall's cracks. Lando sat silently on an overturned crate, staring into a chipped coffee cup, filled only with hot water and a pinch of sugar. He hadn't worked in nearly 5 months. Once a tricycle driver, his motorcycle had been repossessed when the loans piled up. Every day he tried to find something, construction, hauling, anything, but the jobs had become ghosts. They weren't lazy, they were tired. There's a difference. That morning, Rosa planned to go to 3 houses to do laundry. She would earn less than 200 pesos for the day, just enough to buy rice, instant noodles, and a small bundle of firewood. It wouldn't be enough for meat. It hadn't been for weeks. But Rosa didn't complain. Complaining was a luxury. She kissed each of her children goodbye and asked Anna to watch Mila while she was away. Joel asked if they could have fish that night. Rosa smiled and said, "We'll see." It was around noon when everything shifted. A knock, sharp, official, rattled the thin wooden door. Lando opened it to find a uniformed man holding a clipboard and a folded document. He looked like someone who had given this speech 100 times before. "Good afternoon. I'm from the local housing enforcement office. I'm here to inform you that this property is scheduled for demolition in 7 days. Lando blinked. "I'm sorry?" The man handed over the paper. "This area has been earmarked for redevelopment. You're occupying it illegally. You've been served notice before." "No," Lando said, panicked. "We haven't received anything, nothing official." The man sighed. "Maybe it got lost. I'm sorry, sir, but this is final. You need to vacate within the week. After that, the demolition crew will be here." Rosa returned later that day to find Lando sitting motionless, the letter in his lap, the children playing in the dirt outside, unaware of the doom looming over them. She read it once, then twice. Her heart began to pound. The words were dry, bureaucratic, devoid of humanity. This structure must be removed to facilitate public-private housing developments. No compensation, no relocation plan, no alternative. "Where will we go?" she whispered. Lando had no answer. They tried. The next day they went to the local barangay office, to a church that had helped before, to a women's group that sometimes gave out rice. They explained, pleaded, begged. Every answer was the same. There are many families in the same situation. We don't have resources. A priest offered a prayer. An NGO worker offered a flyer with a hotline number that never picked up. A cousin living in another barangay said, "We wish we could help, but we don't even have room for ourselves." By day 3, the weight of reality began to show on Anna's face. She stopped humming when washing dishes. Joel grew quiet, asking fewer questions. He sensed the unease even if he didn't understand it. Mila cried more often. Rosa couldn't sleep. She would sit in the dark, staring at the wall, listening to the mice scurry beneath the floorboards, and wondering if this was the moment everything truly collapsed. Then came the 6th night. A storm rolled in, sudden and cruel. The rain came sideways, hammering through holes in the roof, flooding the floor within minutes. Rosa scrambled to place bowls and basins to catch the leaks, but it was no use. The blankets were soaked. The children huddled together, shivering. Lando tried to build a barrier with old cardboard, but the wind tore it down. With no dry spot left, Rosa held her 3 children against her body and whispered lullabies through the thunder. Lando sat near the door, silent, staring into the blackness. The following morning, they didn't wait. They packed what they could, clothes, 1 pot, a few toys, a picture of their wedding day, and left before the bulldozers came. Joel asked where they were going. "We'll find a place," Rosa said, her voice tight. They didn't. They spent the first night outside a convenience store until the guard shooed them away. The next night behind a warehouse. On the third, they found a spot under a bridge, shared with another family who had also been evicted weeks before. Joel developed a cough. Anna started talking less. Mila cried for her missing bear, which had gotten lost in the rain. On the 4th day, Rosa saw herself reflected in a car mirror. Hair matted, eyes sunken, shirt stained with dust and child's vomit, and didn't recognize the woman staring back. But the worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold concrete beneath them. It was the way people looked at them, if they looked at all, as if they were furniture, as if they had chosen this. And still, Rosa held her head up. She told the children stories every night. She braided Anna's hair with shaking fingers. She wiped Joel's fevered forehead and sang to Mila while her own stomach screamed in emptiness. She didn't cry, not in front of them, not yet. That night, as they lay on flattened cardboard behind a public school, Anna whispered, "Mom, will we ever have a home again?" Rosa pulled her close and whispered, "We will. I don't know how yet, but we will." Then softly, as if speaking to God or no one at all, she added, "Someone will see us." Somewhere across town a stranger did, but that moment, that turn, hadn't come yet. They were still in the dark, still falling, and the ground hadn't hit them. Not yet. The days blurred. Time on the street moved differently, measured not in hours or calendars, but in the number of times the children cried from hunger, in how long they could linger in a spot before being moved along, in how many strangers looked past them without stopping. The Santos family no longer had a home. They had moments of rest scattered across concrete and corners, shaded spaces claimed for a few hours at a time, a cardboard kingdom constantly under siege by the rain, by insects, by indifference. They tried sleeping in the back of a bus terminal the first night after eviction, but the security guard poked Lando awake with a baton at 2 a.m. and told them to leave. The next night was worse. An alley behind a closed hardware store where rats rustled beside them and the smell of gasoline lingered. Rosa didn't sleep. She kept watch, clutching Mila to her chest, ears tuned to every noise, every approaching footstep. Anna curled into Joel, who coughed fitfully throughout the night. By the 3rd day, the family had eaten only bread rolls and a banana, given to them by another struggling street vendor. Rosa tried begging, quietly with shame, but most people walked faster when they saw her. Some stared without blinking. A few dropped coins into her hand and never said a word. Lando grew silent. He barely spoke, except to say, "Let's go," when it was time to move. He was folding inward, ashamed, shrinking in the face of his family's pain. He avoided Rosa's eyes. Once she found him behind a dumpster, sitting alone, his fists clenched, whispering to himself, "I failed them. I failed them." Rosa didn't have time to collapse. There were children to feed. She began walking farther, past crowded markets, approaching food stalls and sari-sari stores with trembling dignity. Sometimes she offered to sweep floors for leftover rice. Sometimes she just asked. Some women turned their backs. One man said, "You people are everywhere." Then came the fever. Joel's cough deepened into something chesty and wet. He shivered despite the heat and whimpered at night. Rosa wrapped him in the one dry shirt they had and pressed a damp rag to his forehead. They had no medicine, no money for a clinic. She whispered prayers in his ear, while Anna held Mila and sang lullabies she half remembered from happier times. On the 5th day, behind the marketplace near Roxas Avenue, Rosa met her. Donna Selly was a fruit vendor in her late 60s, her stall lined with overripe mangoes and bruised bananas. She noticed the children huddled near the wall first. Then she saw Rosa's sunburnt face, her arms trembling from carrying Mila. "You okay, Hija?" Keely asked gently. Rosa nodded reflexively, but her eyes welled up. She tried to say she didn't want anything, but the words failed her. Seely handed her a cup of water and half a pandesal. "Sit. Rest a while." Rosa hesitated, then sat on the curb. She fed the bread to Mila piece by piece. Seely asked nothing, just watched. When Rosa finally spoke, it came in fragments. "Eviction, nowhere to go, sick child, no help?" The old woman frowned. "This city has a lot of ears, but not enough hearts." She took out an old phone, scratched and taped at the corner. "Do you mind?" she asked. "I think people need to hear you." Rosa blinked. "What do you mean?" Seely lifted the phone and began to record. "Just say what you told me, nothing fancy, just your truth." With trembling hands, Rosa looked into the lens. "My name is Rosa Santos. We were evicted from our home 6 days ago. We have 3 children. One of them is sick. We sleep outside now. We've asked for help, but no one listens. I don't want pity. I just want someone to see us, to help us stand up again." It was less than 45 seconds. Seely posted the video to her social media page with a simple caption, "This is the Philippines too. Don't look away." She tagged local politicians, news pages, churches. She didn't expect much. But the internet, unpredictable and hungry for realness, responded. Within 12 hours, the video had over 10,000 views. By the next morning, it had exploded. People shared it on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. "This is heartbreaking," some wrote. "How is this allowed?" Others offered clothes, food, and in some cases, shelter, but most were too far or too late. The noise grew louder. And then, somewhere in the algorithmic chaos, the name Manny Pacquiao appeared. It began with a comment from a fan page. "Sir Manny, you always help those in need. Please watch this." Another tagged him directly, then another, then 50 more. The legend himself hadn't posted in weeks. But early that morning, from his estate in Sarangani province, Manny Pacquiao clicked on the link. He watched the video once, then again. It hit him in the chest. He saw the tears in Rosa's eyes. He saw the way she clutched her baby, the boy coughing beside her, the dignity with which she asked for nothing but to be seen. And he saw himself, not as a boxer, not as a senator, but as a barefoot child in General Santos selling pan de sal to feed his mother. He closed his laptop, stood up and made a call. Less than 24 hours later, a black SUV pulled up near the school where the Santos family had been sleeping. A man in a white polo shirt stepped out and looked around until he found them. "Are you the Santos family?" he asked gently. Rosa flinched. She expected more bad news. She stepped forward slowly. "Yes." "Who are you?" The man smiled. "I work with Manny Pacquiao. He saw your video. He wants to meet you." Rosa stared at him, confused. "You're joking." He shook his head. "He wants to help if you'll let him." Lando emerged from the shadows, holding Joel. His eyes narrowed with disbelief. "Why would someone like him help us?" The man looked at him and said simply, "Because he's been where you are." He offered them bottled water, sandwiches, and a ride. Rosa hesitated, then looked at her children, dirty, exhausted, trembling, and nodded. The car ride was quiet. Rosa sat in the back with Mila asleep in her lap. Anna stared out the window, as if memorizing every tree. Lando sat beside her, holding Joel close. None of them spoke. They didn't dare hope yet. Hope had teeth. Hope could betray, but deep inside something stirred. Not joy, not yet. Maybe the beginning of possibility. The vehicle drove toward a gated sports facility in the heart of General Santos, a place usually reserved for fighters, politicians, celebrities. The gates opened slowly. They were no longer invisible. Something was changing, something real. They didn't know it yet, but the fall was ending. What came next was the rise. The gates closed behind them with a soft, metallic groan. The black SUV rolled slowly into the quiet compound, past manicured hedges, training equipment, and a boxing ring under a canopy of aging tarps. The sky was still dim, grey with early morning light, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The Santos family stepped out one by one. Rosa held Mila against her shoulder, her shirt stained with formula and sweat. Anna clung to her side, wide-eyed and silent. Lando carried Joel, who had fallen asleep on the ride. None of them spoke as they walked across the tiled path, led by the man in the white polo shirt. The air was heavy with something unfamiliar, anticipation, disbelief, maybe even fear. After so many rejections, so many nights on the street, what did it mean to suddenly be wanted? They were ushered into a modest but clean room inside the facility. Bottled water sat on the table, along with crackers and packs of instant noodles. Rosa looked at the food, but didn't touch it. She waited, alert. Lando sat stiffly, his hands twitching. He had not let go of Joel. Then came the moment. The door opened and Manny Pacquiao entered. He was smaller than Lando expected. Compact, quiet, without the glow of a man who had once ruled the boxing world. He wore a simple white t-shirt, jeans and rubber shoes. His eyes were kind but not soft. He moved with the grace of someone who had spent decades learning how to take punches and still stand. For a moment, no one said anything. Rosa rose to her feet, stunned. Anna gasped. Even Lando, hardened by months of humiliation, couldn't speak. Manny approached slowly, as if not wanting to startle them. He nodded gently. "Good morning." Rosa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She simply stared at him, her lips trembling. Manny looked at the children, then at Lando. Then he turned to Rosa. "I saw your video," he said. "I saw your courage." Rosa blinked hard. We didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't," he said. "You reminded people what it means to be human." He pulled a chair and sat across from them, elbows on his knees, not as a hero, not as a senator or icon, but as a man. "I know what it's like," he said, voice quiet. "To sleep on the floor, to eat nothing but water and air, to carry shame that isn't yours." Lando finally looked him in the eye. "We didn't ask to be saved." "I know," Manny replied. "That's why you deserve help." There was no grand speech, no cameras, no publicist, just the echo of empathy between people who knew the same hunger. He stood and motioned toward the door. "Come, there's something I want to show you." They followed him past the ring, through a side gate, and into a separate compound behind the gym. There stood a row of houses, small concrete but painted in fresh colors. Clothes hung outside. A few children played with a ball. A woman watered plants beside a small garden box. Manny pointed. "That one. It's yours." Rosa stared. "What?" "A house," he said. "Already paid for. You can move in today. It's not big, but it's safe. No rent, no eviction." Anna burst into tears. Rosa's knees buckled slightly. She caught herself, shaking. Lando stood frozen. Manny put a hand on Lando's shoulder. "You're not broken. You just need time to heal." Inside the house, they found 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a table, 4 chairs, and a fridge already stocked with basics. There was a bed, an actual bed. Joel lay down immediately and smiled for the first time in days. Mila clapped. Anna wandered into the second room and traced the wall with her fingers, as if making sure it was real. Rosa sat on the floor and sobbed. Manny didn't stay long. He gave them space. But before he left, he handed Rosa a small folder. Inside were documents for the house, an ID card for government assistance, and a letter of recommendation to a women's cooperative in the city that trained mothers in laundry services. "You already know how to work," he said. "Now you'll get paid fairly." He also gave Lando a card. "There's a technical school, electrician training. I've paid for the course. You start when you're ready." Lando didn't know what to say. He just nodded, eyes wet. "You're not charity," Manny said. "You're community." He turned to go, but Rosa stopped him. "Why us?" she asked, voice cracking. "There are so many families. Why us?" Manny smiled, sad and soft. "Because someone helped me, and I never forgot." He left with no fanfare. Over the next few weeks, the family began to rediscover normal. Rosa started attending the training sessions at the cooperative. It was hard work, but she smiled more now. She returned home each day with soap-scented hands and stories for the children. Lando took Joel to the clinic, where he received antibiotics and quickly improved. Lando himself began studying, attending classes 3 nights a week. He struggled with math, but refused to give up. He had something to prove, not to the world, but to himself. Anna enrolled in a public school. She made friends. She smiled again. Mila learned how to say mama and house. She ran barefoot across the tiled floor with shrieks of joy. They had routines, breakfasts with eggs and rice, homework at the kitchen table, evenings spent watching TV together on a donated second-hand unit. Rosa started a small notebook to track expenses. Lando cleaned the front yard every morning. They grew a plant. It wasn't perfect. Some days were still hard. Money was tight. The heat didn't go away, but the fear, that deep, gnawing fear of not knowing where they'd sleep, was gone. The video continued to circulate. A local news team aired a short feature. Other families came forward. Inspired by the story, an NGO launched a new shelter initiative. Donations poured in. A government office promised reform. Manny didn't claim credit. When asked in an interview, he only said, "I saw a family that reminded me of my own, that's all." Months passed. The rains returned, but this time they had a roof that didn't leak. Rosa cooked sinigang on weekends. Lando fixed broken outlets for neighbors and began charging small fees. Anna brought home a certificate for academic excellence. Joel ran without coughing. Mila grew stronger. And one afternoon, as Rosa stood at the doorway watching her children chase a ball in the street, she felt something rise in her chest. Not sorrow, not relief, pride. She had not been rescued. She had been seen. And in that moment of visibility, in that single act of recognition, everything changed. Her family didn't need to be saved. They needed a chance, one chance, and Manny had given it. In a quiet moment, Rosa opened her notebook and wrote a message at the top of the page. "When we had nothing, we still had each other. Now we have a home, and we will keep building." Outside, laughter echoed. Inside, the kettle began to whistle. The war wasn't over, but the fight was theirs now.